Trans used to mean a discomfort with your sex, which is a mental health condition, which they're saying it's not. So what they're saying is trans equals queer, and queer equals a political identity. And no one is born a conservative or born a liberal. So this is utter nonsense coming from the United Nurses of Alberta. Let me just finish.
Okay.
And the fifth one, it says they support diverse and inclusive workplaces in the community. And they go into a little quote here talking about the human rights. So I feel I thought this was interesting because they do contradict the medical association and they're including a lot of nonsense. And these are the people these are the people who are supposed to be experts. So moving on from our theme of associations here, I think even before Danielle Smith released her social media announcement, I believe the Alberta Teachers Association put out a statement saying, we don't like this, we were not consulted, how can somebody possibly put out a parents' rights bill without consulting teachers? And then obviously they came out with something else after the announcement. Now, what I found really interesting is that the Alberta Teachers Association, so again, let's remind everyone, this is about the parental involvement in the care and safeguarding of their child. That's what this is about in Alberta. So parents have been consulted. The LGBTQ community, or LGBT, I don't know that the Q community has been consulted, but the LGBT community has certainly been consulted. Why would teachers require consultation when it comes to the relationship between parents and children?
They've had a real chokehold on these things up until now, and they still do in Ontario. There was a slide, I don't know if we're going to cover it, but about Ontario's decision at this point as to whether or not to make any changes. But getting down to the second from last paragraph, where it says, again, we're talking about the suicidality question. Transgender youth are 5 times more likely to think about suicide and nearly 8 times more likely to attempt it than other children. Now, what they're not telling here, and there were medical doctors on Twitter this week talking about this. And, I've talked to therapists and counselors, and in the reading that I've done, the kids that are most likely to express unstable identity are people who have borderline personality disorder. One of the diagnosable criteria is an unstable identity. And borderline personality disorder is an extremely difficult personality disorder to deal with. It's not a mental illness. It falls into a separate category. And it's characterized by unstable emotions, what's called emotional lability, and an unstable identity, a fear of rejection, and manipulative kinds of behaviors, lack of empathy, some shared characteristics with other personality disorders. Now, that's just one. Another one is obsessive compulsive. We have kids who are autistic. There are kids who are having eating disorders. They're cutting. They're engaged in self-harm or high-risk behaviors. And these are the cluster of kids that are falling into the trans trap. It's not your well-adjusted, B student who plays on the soccer team that's suddenly identifying as trans. These kids have other significant issues. One of the common themes is, there are lots of really interesting positive characteristics. Like my daughter, extremely creative. She was an early and precocious reader. She's highly introverted. So she lives inside her own imagination. And, so these kids who are struggling, and lots of them come from high conflict families, whether they're divorced or not, there's issues in the home. So this is not something that just kind of shows up in isolation by itself. Most of these kids have some other or multiple other significant mental and emotional comorbidities. And that cluster is the cluster that is prone to suicidality and suicide attempt. So to isolate, and at least it's a teachers association here, not the medical association saying this, but they're just as bad, saying that we have to give these trans kids what they want. They've got their hand over the candle. They're threatening suicidality or threatening suicide. They're emotionally blackmailing them. So we have to completely cave. And that is absolutely the wrong approach to take with these kinds of distressed children.
Thank you for watching. If you appreciate the work that I do, please consider supporting me financially. I'm very happy to speak up for the protection of kids, and if you can't support financially, I would appreciate it if you help me overcome the censorship and just share these videos with other people so they know exactly what is happening. I left a link in the description to my Ko-fi account where you can do a one-time donation or a monthly subscription. Anything helps and your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you once again.